I'm Cass. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up these 16 books that I managed to read in April. I don't know how I did it. Don't ask me questions. It just happened. Okay, 16 books were in fact read, and we're gonna start with one of the longest ones that I read this month, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I have the UK editions that were split into part 1s and part 2s, which someone so kindly informed me that they recently came out with UK editions that were not split, and I've never felt more pain than knowing that I have already 4 books in this series split. But regardless, 5 stars. Obviously, are we surprised at this point? I have an entire reading vlog where I go a little bit more in depth about my thoughts on this book, spoiler free, so if you want to hear more, vlog is on my channel. But I loved this book so much, which should come to a surprise to nobody because Brandon Sanderson is obviously my favorite author, and I'm just baffled that I've waited this long to pick up Stormlight. I really enjoyed this book. There were definitely bits that dragged. Kaladin was definitely my favorite character in this book. His POVs were hands down the most intriguing, and his story arc in this book was definitely what kept me captivated to continue. Shallan's POV definitely had to grow on me. It didn't really get interesting till probably the end of the first half of the book, and Dalinar didn't really grow on me till like the very end. Regardless, I am so excited to pick up Words of Radiance. Hopefully in May, we'll see. Honestly, I don't have much else to say. The pacing was pretty consistent for Kaladin and Shallan's point of view, but like I said, I just really struggled with Dalinar's POV, but there's definitely some Dalinar fans out there, which wish that was me. I just really personally struggled with Dalinar's POV, and that's what kind of slowed me down in terms of pacing, but regardless, I think this was a really good setup, and I can't wait to see where the story leads to. Another really long book that I read this month was The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Now, this book has been on my TBR for literally ages, and I am thrilled that I finally read it. Unfortunately, I was not a big fan of this book. I did end up giving it like a 2.5 stars. I read this almost immediately after The Way of Kings, so jumping into back-to-back high fantasy novels, maybe not my best plan, but you know, what's done is done. I found this book so confusing on so many levels with the world building and the magic systems, and just I found it to be so confusing and boring. And even when we finally did get to a climactic end, it was like 20 pages, and this book is over 800 pages long, and you gave me 20 pages for this climactic end. There wasn't enough dragons. There wasn't enough priory action. I wish we actually spent more time at the priory because that was probably one of my favorite parts of this book, and we barely got any exploration into it. I feel like we got so much unnecessary world building, and the world building that we did get was just the boring bits, and all the really interesting things that I wish we dived more into were very much so glazed over. I just wasn't a big fan. Although, I want to make this very clear because I got a couple comments on my video where I read Priory. I am just a girl, okay? I'm just a reader. I don't have any qualifications, okay? I love when y'all enjoy books that I don't like. It's not a personal vendetta against anyone if I don't like a book that you enjoy. It makes me happy that you found enjoyment where I did not. Let's keep it peaceful. That's the piece I wanted to say. I didn't know people were that passionate about Priory, but like I said, I did end up giving it a 2.5 stars. I will not be picking up A Day of Fallen Night, even though so many of y'all told me that it's better. I just don't have any interest in returning to this universe, and there's so many other high fantasy books that I'd rather give a shot to, so she's gonna go. We're gonna unhaul her eventually, but I am happy that I read it because now I can have my own opinion on it. I just hate that the opinion I have on it is negative, but we persevere and we move on. Next, I'm going to talk about The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. This was my very first book by her, and I've been eyeing this book for ages. So many people have told me that I was going to love this book in real life and online, and I just love that y'all know me so well because I did give this book 4.5 stars. I ended up captivated by this book from chapter 1. Seriously, the opening to this book is phenomenal. It was a lot more dense than I was expecting. I read this during a 24-hour read-a-thon that I did with Katie, and it definitely took me a lot longer to read than I was anticipating. However, the romance in this book feels so incredibly real, so incredibly authentic, that I was just captivated for the entire journey. Also, big props to the author for trusting the readers to understand her own writing, because I feel like A lot of times with recent author releases that I've tried reading, which I'll actually get to a couple books that I DNF'd and I'll, talk more about it, but sometimes things are just repeated so many times unnecessarily instead of just trusting that the reader got it. Okay, you told the information on the page before. We don't have to repeat it 3 more times before something happens. I know that's a really vague way of putting it. It was nice that things were foreshadowed but not shoved down your throat, where the author kind of was like nudge nudge wink wink and not like punching you in your shoulder like, did you see this? Did you see what I did here? Did you see what I did here? We're gonna go with that explanation and hopefully y'all understand my explanation of that. I loved the romance. The main characters in this book also were intelligent, and it just felt like a very real reaction about what went down. I am going to pick up the second book. This is a duology, and The Traitor Queen is on my May TBR, so fingers crossed I'm able to get to that really soon. I'm excited to see how their story wraps up. I'm hoping for a happy ending because the end of this book, not very happy. I will say that is my one critique, is the ending felt pretty rushed to quickly set up for the next book. I feel like it could have been maybe 50 more pages to kind of spread that out a bit, but obviously there is a second book to wrap up those plot lines that were just so quickly rushed into. But that is my one critique, and that is the one reason why it wasn't a 5-star, was the ending just rushed to its conclusion very quickly, but it did leave some really good crumbs to start the second book, so I'm really excited to pick that up. Taking a little pause from all these high fantasies, I read so much high fantasy this month. We have Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. Y'all, I gave this a solid 4 stars. It is an adorable little high school romance. I had so much fun with this book, which was well needed after I DNF'd 2 books in a row before getting to this book. Again, we'll talk about my DNFs at the end, but this, it was just so cute. 100% would reread it. It's not very long either. It's under 300 pages. We're following Riley, who is a musical theater kid. She loves musical theater, and she ended up stealing her parents' car to go see a show, which leads her to be grounded, and her punishment is working in her dad's comic book store, which is a very fitting punishment for her because she wants nothing to do with it. And Nathan is a kid who already works at the comic book store, and it has fake dating, it has D&D, it has musical theater references. It's just a delightful time. As someone who likes musical theater to a casual extent and who also would love to do D&D at some point and loves fantasy, it was just a fun book. It definitely didn't take itself too seriously, but the cheesiness and corniness of like the high school romance wasn't too over the top where I actually could enjoy it. I've read a few high school romances where it's like all about prom and da da da, and I'm like, I just can't get into that, but it was just a fun take. It seamlessly dove into some deeper topics with like relationships between parents, children of divorce, family life troubles. This book definitely dove a lot deeper than I was expecting, and the resolutions at the end were very satisfying. So it was just really, really cute, really, really fun. I would absolutely recommend this book if you're someone who likes D&D, likes musical theater, likes romance. It has everything wrapped up and a nice little bow on top. Okay, delightful time, 4 stars. I would definitely recommend this for the summer too. It just feels very like summery fun romance. And moving back into fantasy, we have A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. This is the 4th and last book in the Ember and the Ashes quartet, which Katie and I were reading for our Women's in Words book club. I have an entire spoiler-filled live show where I discussed this book in depth with Katie. Gave it 3 stars. Not a great way to wrap up the series. This was a reread for me. I read this back in 2021, and I definitely appreciated it more back then than I did now. I think my standards of what I was expecting definitely shifted. I found this book to be too long, too repetitive, and the plot conveniences, okay? Basically chalk everything up to gin magic. And if you're at the live show, you know what I'm talking about. I feel like this series definitely was a lot more risky in terms of YA. It delved a lot deeper into heavier topics. It was not afraid to shy away from killing characters, but there was a few characters in this book that got killed off that just felt so pointless, where it almost seemed like it was purely for the shock value versus any plot-driven aspect. The way things wrap up felt so out of sorts for certain characters. I don't know. The first 2 books in the series, stunning. Love. But by the time you get to the end, it feels like you're reading a completely different series. So that's a little unfortunate. I did give it a low 3 stars, and that's that. Quickly, Ranger's Apprentice. We are 6 books in now. Stunning. Love. The Siege of Mackinac. Great character interactions. If you don't know, Ranger's Apprentice is my all-time favorite series. That's why I briefly talk about it, because I've talked about these books so much on my channel, but I highly recommend. It's a fun time. It is set back in the Middle Ages. The cast of characters is phenomenal. And we get some Scandian action in this one as well, which is a group of Viking-inspired warriors, and they siege a castle. What more do you freaking want, okay? Cute romance moments in this book too. Love. This next cover, questionable. Go with it, okay? We have Hounded by Kevin Hearn. This is the first book in the Iron Druid Chronicles. I think there's like 10 books or something crazy. I picked this up from the library because I saw the book at Barnes & Noble. Wasn't willing to invest in it, but wanted to give it a shot. This was a delight, okay? We are following this druid who is immortal, and we have Celtic deities trying to steal back a sword that he stole but kind of didn't steal. It's a whole thing. Everyone's trying to kill him. It's just fun. The humor in this book is right up my alley, and I'm actually planning on continuing this series just casually when I feel like picking it up. It's so fun, y'all. I also would love to shout out Katie for pointing out how many times Genghis Khan is referenced in this book or just mentioned. There's a talking dog, but not like an actual like talking dog. They can like telepathically communicate. Our main character Atticus has a team of attorneys in which one is a vampire and one is a werewolf. It gets so ridiculous by the end, but it's just a delightful time. I gave this a solid 3 stars. Nothing super special per se. It was just so funny and just so fun to read, and I loved getting to read something Celtic inspired, and the magic system is pretty cool, and the fact that it's an urban fantasy is just delightful. It's set in a tiny town in Arizona. He runs like a magical bookshop. It's a delight. It truly is. Another book that I read during the 24-hour readathon with Katie was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, and I gave this a 4.5 stars, y'all. It was so good. I want to preface this by saying that I had already adjusted my expectations before going into Ruthless Vows, because I heard a lot of people were disappointed in how little romance and interactions there were between the main 2 characters, and a lot more magic and god focused this book was, and I loved it. Okay, I love politics, I love war in books. I find them so interesting, and the fantasy elements interwoven throughout this book were so good. We got to see more of our main villain, who was so interesting, and someone that I almost struggled to see as a villain for a little bit, and connecting with him on that like humanity aspect, intriguing, especially since we got to see more of him as a god than we did our like good god. I'm not saying the names of the gods because I quite frankly already forgot them. I'm bad with names, y'all. I'm bad with names. I loved the love story regardless. I loved the introduction of another side character and their romance. Honestly, it was so fun, and I can't wait to read more of Rebecca Ross's readings. And I just cannot wait to read more from Rebecca Ross. Truly, her prose are spectacular. Well, I wish we did still get more interactions and more letters in Ruthless Vows, since that's like the whole premise of this duology, which is the Letters of Enchantment duology. You would hope that there were more letters, but the letters we did get, broke my heart. The beginning of this book plays on a trope I do not like, and yet Rebecca Ross executes it so well that I'm not even annoyed, which is quite frankly shocking because it is a trope I absolutely despise. So 4.5 stars. I loved it, not quite as much as Divine Rivals, but definitely up there with it. We have The Adventures of Amina Elsafi by Shannon Chakraborty, which is my very first Patreon book club book from the relaunch. It was fun for like the first half, okay? This was giving me everything and more that I was wanting. We have Amina, who is basically dragged out of retirement against her will. She agrees to this adventure without realizing there's like a caveat, which is like, oh, I'm gonna kill your family if you don't go along with it, sort of thing. So she goes and starts recruiting people from her old crew. In the beginning, that was it. Basically, she was traveling around, slowly rescuing people or convincing people to rejoin her crew. The humor in the beginning of this book is spectacular, right up my alley. I was having so much fun with this book. And then the halfway point hit, and then the magic was introduced, and then the villain was introduced, and then I was just so confused in which the direction of this book went. First off, the villain, bland and stale, okay? Horrible. The motivations were so cliche, and there was no depth to his arc whatsoever. It was very much so like, let's rule the world together. weird. A lot of the fantastical elements, there was like a bird people scene and you lost me there. So much was going on, and yet I didn't understand any of it. I went on Goodreads to see if I was the only one who felt this way, and people were saying that the end of this book, the magic and everything that was introduced, really drew from the City of Brass series, which I haven't read yet, but I'm going to read for Wyverns and Words. So I'm wondering if I had read that, I would have appreciated those elements more, but I was just really confused. I like how this story is told to a certain extent. So Amina is telling the story. So she kind of has that I'm the main character, I'm gonna survive mentality because she's telling these stories of her past. So that really took out some of the stakes. However, I did like that the narrator kept jutting in at certain points. I liked that element. It didn't necessarily take me out of the story. I found it very funny. But the Goodreads reviews for this book are so mixed. Elements that I loved, people freaking hated. The first half of this book, some people despised, but loved the second half. So honestly, I would recommend this book. Even though I did end up giving this a low 3, it's one of those novels where it's like, give it a shot, see if you like it. It's got boats, so obviously I was entertained. You know, the second half of the book, that's when they're off the boat. Maybe the boatless scenes were the issues all along. I gave this a 3-star. I had a few qualms with it, but nothing to necessarily deter me from trying to continue the series. So when the second book comes out, I'll give it a go. I enjoyed Shannon Chakraborty's humor with this series, and her writing wasn't too convoluted until like the end where I was just confused, but that could be just a me problem. Okay. Another book that I was actually really disappointed in was Heartstopper Volume 5. I had put off reading this. I know this came out last December, and I just hadn't picked it up yet, especially since I'm on not necessarily a book buying ban, but a Cass, you really need to be more decisive with the books that you do spend your money on. I'm in my frugal era. I really did not enjoy this graphic novel. I gave it a low 3. It was my least favorite of the Heartstopper books, hands down. I felt that the topics that we discussed were not my favorite, and I felt that the way things were handled were also not my favorite. Alice Oseman usually is pretty good about exploring heavier topics, but it could just be my age compared to the characters and the exploration of what they're talking about that I just didn't really want to be in their heads for. And also, it almost made the relationship seem a little toxic. So that's another reason why I wasn't a big fan, because so far Nick and Charlie's romance has just been really cute, really fun. We also work through heavier issues, but the codependency in this book, a little too much. A little too much. And then I found my new favorite manga. Okay? Now, Orange will always hold a special place in my heart, but the more and more I binge this series, I'm like, oh, is it? Is it a new favorite? Orange, obviously my favorite manga ever, but Fen Beyond Journeys End, I binged 6 volumes at the end of April. It was like the last day of April that I started this series. So I have already caught up to volume 9 right now, but that's for Mamie to talk about. Not that there's much I can talk about other than I love this manga to death. I am not a big manga person. I know I read Spy Family a couple years back, and I'll casually read it as it comes out just because I'm already so invested into the series. But with Spy Family, something that started to irk me a little bit, we kind of slowed down with moving towards the end goal of this series, and it's gonna have to be a lot of volumes for the series to come to its conclusion. Fen solves that problem by not even really having an end goal. It's just a journey manga. It has, oh my gosh, okay, let me compose myself. I have just been obsessing over this series for the past week. We are following Fen, and 80 years prior, she was with a group of 4 people, and they defeated this demon king, and she's an elf mage, so she lives for a very long time. She's quite old, so 10 years for her, not very long. However, 2 of her companions were humans and 1 was a dwarf. So her party members are slowly dying off, essentially, and this is finally what makes her want to learn about humans and their lives. She ends up taking on an apprentice, Fen, who, the cast of characters in this is so good. She is a freaking delight. We get to see her as like a little kid, and then as she slowly grows up. And then we also have Stark as one of our other main characters. This new group that Fen is in to essentially go to heaven, not necessarily like heaven, but visit a place where they can commune with spirits to talk to her old party members, which that is sort of the end goal, but it's so it's kind of just there. You know, they're traveling and they keep going on all these little side quests, saving villages, killing demons. The magic in this world is so cool. Them fighting demons is so cool. The way this manga progresses time is so good because obviously we have an elven mage who 10 years is like nothing for her. So an entire year, that's like barely any time at all. So a lot of the adventures where they're staying in one place for a long time, we just get cute little panels of like a montage essentially. The battle scenes are not too long. I wish I liked action mangas, but I just feel bad when it's just like scene after scene of like no dialogue and I'm just like flipping the pages and spending like 10 seconds max looking at them. I'm like, I always feel guilty. I'm like, I should appreciate the art more. So the action and fight scenes not taking up so much time makes me feel better, where I can like look at it, appreciate it, move on. The dialogue, so good. The running bits in this manga, the running bits are so good, and y'all know I love a good bit. Okay, there has been many bits on my own channel, okay? I love a good bit. So many bits. I love it. Frieren as a main character is so interesting because she seems so detached and so unapathetic, and yet she'll have like these little moments. They're so good. And also, to cap it all off, in case you don't completely understand how obsessed I am with this manga, I'm watching the anime. I wished I was an anime girly. I just suck at sitting down and watching TV shows or animes or anything with episodes. I'm not the best at it. I'll watch a few episodes and then get bored, get distracted, whatnot. There's 28 episodes in season 1. I am 12 episodes in 2 days. I'm loving this so much. The animation for the anime is so stunning. The voice acting, they have brought this story to life so well, and I love it so much. Volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the ones that I read in April. All of them got 5 stars. Oh my gosh. I love this manga so much. So I have a manga recommendation, y'all. Fen Beyond Journeys End. So good. If you can't tell, I'm super passionate about it. I'm also gonna collect it, which is quite unfortunate because I was doing really good with not buying books. But now I have like 10 volumes I need to catch up on and buy. I've already bought volume 10, so it's all downhill from here. I cannot wait. The artwork is stunning, the covers stunning, the characters stunning, the humor, the writing, the journey, the atmosphere, the soundtrack for the anime, so good. Put it on as background music and read, okay? You'll be transported into this dang world and you're gonna love every little minute of it. Anyways, those were the 16 books that I officially completely read. Couple of other things. DNF'd Dragonfall. My thoughts? Why was there every possible POV in this book? There was first person, there was second person, and there was third person. There was first and second person in one POV. I was like not having it. It was also really boring. So big L on that one, I guess. Sorry, I've just dished on too many books this month. Also, When the Moon Hatched, DNF'd it. I like 250 pages. I can get behind an annoying, snarky assassin. I could not get behind our main character in this one. That's really all I have to say about it. I don't know why I'm like trying to wrap this up so quickly. I think it's because I spent like 5 minutes talking about Frieren. I'm still reading Malice. This is a book that I've mostly complete in April. I'm 450 pages in. I have enjoyed this book. I have enjoyed it quite a bit. I have taken too damn long to read this book though because it's been a couple weeks and I keep forgetting characters because there are a lot of characters in this book. So if you're like me and you suck at characters, don't take all month to read the book. But I am really liking it. I will be continuing this series. This is my first John Gwynne book, so it's definitely no Brandon Sanderson. A lot of his writing is a little bit more clunky with moving through the plot, but I've enjoyed it regardless. I really like the atmosphere. It's very reminiscent of Ranger's Apprentice, which we've already discussed. Set back, you know, Middle Ages. It's got knights. It's got a coming of age story following like a little boy as he grows up. We've got some traders. We've got some action. We've got some kingdoms. We've got a whole freaking map. I mean, what more do you need? You know? That was my wrap up. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing all my thoughts. Hopefully I convinced you to pick up a few of these books. Hopefully I convinced you to take off a few books from your TBR, and let me know what y'all have been reading. I am so unbelievably impressed with myself that I read 16 books, and 2 of them were over 800 pages long. April me was built different. I cannot wait to continue reading Frieren. Unfortunately, Volume 10 is the last translated volume out. Consumed it too quickly. Yeah, let me know if you have any other manga recommendations that are similar to Frieren. I need that in my life. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my lovely Patreons for supporting the channel. If you're ever looking for more content from me, check out my Patreon, always linked below. We've got buddy reads every month. We have a read-a-thon coming up that I'm really proud of. It's tournament themed. You can like pick your kingdom based on the books that you're reading. It's gonna be so fun. I'm very excited about that. That's happening middle of May, so if you join before then, can join for the readathon. We also have exclusive videos, so thank you all for your support over there. And of course, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.